Soul family, peace to the gods, stars, and goddesses. Now, soul family, have you noticed that a lot of Middle Eastern and Asian nationality people, no matter where these Asian and Middle Eastern nationality people had grew up in a particular state within that particular country, they sound the same everywhere that they are. Like Middle Easterns in the United Kingdom, they sound like the Middle Easterns in their own native country. Middle Easterns in USA sound like the Middle Easterns in their own native country. A Middle Eastern individual in New York sounds the same as a Middle Eastern individual somewhere in Florida or Louisiana. And you want to know the reason why? Because Middle Eastern people never had their ancestry history stripped from them from slave owners. That's the reason why Middle Eastern people was able to keep their accent no matter where they grew up at, all the way from history. The same way with Asians. So found these modern day Asians that you see that look like Jet Li, look like Donnie Yen, Jackie Chan. Every modern day Asian that you seen, whether they were like Asians in the southern states of USA, the eastern states of USA, or Asians in Canada, Asians in United Kingdom, or Asians in their own native country, they literally sound the same. They don't have an accent difference. But when it comes to melanated Africans and melanated Caribbeans, you notice how a lot of us melanated Africans and melanated Caribbeans, our accent is so different depending on the state within those particular countries that we grew up at, right? So melanated Africans and melanated Caribbeans that grew up in USA or Canada, they sound different from the melanated Africans and Caribbeans in their native countries. You want to know why? Because of slavery. Slave owners attack melanated Africans and melanated Caribbeans the most. So, like, a melanated Afro hair Caribbean African nationality person in the southern states is going to sound way different than a melanated African and a melanated Caribbean living in the states and United Kingdom due to slavery. Right now, I'll tell you about this, right? Melanated Africans and melanated Caribbeans that grew up in the states and United Kingdom, they were able to keep, they somehow, some way, they fought for civil rights over in United Kingdom to be able to keep their ancestry accent. That's why a lot of melanated Africans and melanated Caribbeans that you see that sound very proper, that's how originally we melanated people spoke throughout our history until slavery came. Melanated Africans and melanated Caribbeans that grew up in the Caribbeans and African countries, they sound just like the melanated people in United Kingdom, right? But besides that point, a melanated African and a melanated Caribbean that grew up in an Asian country, their whole accent is more similar to a bunch of Asians over in the Asian countries, because melanated Africans and melanated Caribbeans that grew up in an Asian country, their accent is nearly close to Koreans, Chinese, Japanese, and etc. over there, because a lot of melanated Africans and melanated Caribbeans had to learn Japanese, Korean, and Chinese that grew up in those Asian countries. So that's why they sound similar to them and don't really speak in their native accent tongue from the African and Caribbean region. So family, this is something that I pinpoint together that I found very intriguing. You know? Now, if you had a Middle Eastern person that grew up in an Asian country, that Middle Eastern person is still gonna sound the same, because a lot of Middle Easterners, they fought to keep they fought so hard to keep their ancestry, flowing strong no matter what country region they go to. So if you see a Middle Eastern person in an Asian country, or a Middle Eastern person in a Caribbean country, these Middle Eastern people are gonna sound the same. A Middle Eastern person in Jamaica or Trinidad or Barbados or St. Vincent Grenadines or St. Lucia or the country of Zimbabwe, in the African countries or Zambia or Tanzania, Middle Eastern people is gonna sound the same no matter where they are. Like Middle Eastern people in the country of Somalia can sound the same as a Middle Eastern person in the country of Canada or a Middle Eastern person in their own native countries, because of how Middle Eastern people they put their foot down to make sure their ancestry is flowing strong throughout the whole earth. But this is way different when it comes to us melanated Africans and melanated Caribbeans. Like I can tell you for sure. Look at the melanated people. Look at melanated people like Usain Bolt. You can tell he grew up in his own native countries, so like he's speaking in his accent that he's supposed to speak in, right? If you see a lot of melanated people that look like Usain Bolt, that grew up in the countries of USA or Canada, or grew up somewhere in Lebanon or somewhere out in an Asian country, they're gonna sound way different from Usain Bolt, because like originally us melanated people had an accent that was so articulate to explain things and just express things in a very comprehensive level, until slave owners, the European slave owners, had took a lot of melanated Caribbeans and Africans over to USA, Canada, and change our accent and forcing us to speak English, right? The only melanated people that are Africans and Caribbeans, which is me, myself, us melanated Africans and Caribbeans that were able to keep our African and Caribbean accent in the Western countries was in UK. Because I could tell you right now, I'm going to do a separate video about this, Soul Family. The UK accent originally came from us melanated people, because the UK accent is really, it's a mix of African and Caribbean mixed into one, because of the melanated Africans and Caribbean slaves that were sent over to United Kingdom, and we fought to keep our accent. We fought to keep our accent. Even though we was forced to speak English, like we had no choice but to speak English over in United Kingdom, but we was able to keep our accent, right? Now the melanated people that's out in United Kingdom, they don't even know that they could be a particular Caribbean or African nationality out there. It's very sad because of Western patriotic teachings, right? But that's all I gotta say about that. But and check this out, Soul Family. Have you noticed that Latins, have you noticed that a lot of Latin nationality people, they're able to keep their accent no matter what country region they go to? A lot of Latins, whether they're Salvadorians, etc., they're able to keep their accent and their ancestry history no matter where they go, because they kept their history flowing strong. And this is something that majority of the melanated Africans and Caribbeans have failed to do. The only, it's crazy, Soul Fam. It's crazy.